Maxie, I've been thinking, should we do season 3 on the Dr. Joe show? You sure? You sure it's a good idea? Let's read through this real fast and see what we have here. Day 6, the shocking conclusion. Dave, it's completely unnecessary to put shocking conclusion in quotes on every single page of the article. Conclusion will do just fine. Maybe put shocking once on page 3. I don't know. It just seems overdone. We all packed our bags in the morning, included my would-be $100 worth of legal Cuban cigars and alcohol combined. Had my last Cuban coffee in Cuba, no shit, Dave, and 2 more cigars before we got ready to hurry up and wait. This is what I hate most about traveling, especially out of the country, and even more so to and from Cuba. They want you there 5 hours early, and the plane will be at least 2 hours late. That's the way it was going down, and that's the way it was going home. Long line of folks with way too much luggage. Not me, but other people. So here's an FYI. Cuba stamp passports now. Alright, I'm going to skip a little bit because we're not learning how to travel here. Before I get to the shocking conclusion, thank yous all around to everyone on my trip. We spent our time with Cuban people talking about life in Cuba, what they do, and whatever else came up in conversation. The experience was second to none for me. The experience was second to none for you. Well, that's good to hear, considering you found out. Wow. I mean, if I found out the shit you found out, I would be going home with my head in my hands. Second to none. Why, Dave? If you want to go on a trip with Colin, no, not me. I'd prefer to go on a trip with somebody who can tell me when I'm wrong, as he should have told you about a dozen times. Okay, here I go. The following are my thoughts and feelings based on the information I saw with my own 2 eyes, what I heard with my own 2 ears, and what I learned in the 30 years I have spent in the cigar industry. I don't see what you saw and heard here has to do with those 30 years, being that you weren't in the Cuban cigar industry, but nonetheless. These are my feelings, thoughts, and beliefs only, and not those necessarily of the people I traveled with at all. Oh, yeah, God forbid. Protect the names of the innocent and all that. The shocking conclusion. Again, first off, God bless America. I'm so lucky to have been born here in the United States of America with the right to pursue happiness, wealth, and success. We all complain about things here in America. Blah, 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 blah. I haven't heard this spiel before. I think I've said it once or twice myself. We can work and become successful if we want. We know. Cuba is a communist fucking state. That sucks big balls, but you know what? That's the way it is. They have history, culture, music, and art. They seem happy and they are more informed about what is happening around the world than I thought they would be. They are not stupid. Why is that even there? They are not stupid? And with an exclamation, like that surprised you that they weren't stupid? It doesn't go anywhere. It just says they are not stupid. They are happy and they are more informed about what is happening around the world than I thought they would be. They are not stupid. That's pretty fucked up, Dave. Some parts of Cuba seem like Dominican Republic. Some parts seem like Nicaragua. I even see some areas that seem like Florida. Well, it's only 90 miles off the coast. And some seem like New Orleans, with people singing, dancing, and partying in the streets. I do see that, absolutely. In fact, I listen to some old ragtime type New Orleans music and stuff along with cigar smoking. I think it goes great. And it reminds me of Cuba, even though it doesn't come from Cuba. It is way down south and all that, so things equidistance. Anyway, my tangents. Geez, even reading your article about how much shit has gone wrong here, I get excited. I just love the culture, man, you know? Once I got past all the propaganda signs, billboards, and posters, I actually felt safe. Crime is very, very low. I mean, you were with other people, right? I don't understand why you felt threatened. There were no drugs, no signs of weapons or guards like in some countries. It was very civilized. Well, shit, I knew that just from looking at the fucking pictures, man. I mean the other pictures online. I mean, the ones I've been looking at for the last 10 years. Nobody seemed like they were trying to get out. Actually, I asked. I think the ones that wanted to leave left, and those that remain are all right with it. They certainly would like improvements with their freedoms, but so would we. They see improvements happening now and expect them to continue where Americans feel we are losing our rights and freedoms and expect to continue. I spoke candidly with someone who not once but twice asked me to run for president. I'm sure joking, ... ellipse, but. Wow, man. Really awfully high of yourself, right? Because of my thoughts of how to improve Cuba. Oh, what? Like recreating the original blends instead of just stuffing cigars with anything? It really wouldn't take too much to turn it around in a big way. No, of course not. But this show doesn't get into political affects. Which takes me to how their product really is. The Cubans believe that the world believes, along with them, that Cuba has the best cigars, rum, sugar, and coffee. Everyone knows that, right? This is what I believe. They don't. They don't. Cuba stopped caring in 1960. It is a communist country and communism doesn't work. Well, we're going to skip this only because we don't do politics here. For good reason. The old Cuban way exists for this reason. They don't have the tools and supplies to do it the new and improved way. But don't worry, I'm not skipping it because I will make the point about industry having a soul and competition making a good product. But we'll get to that. The rum barrels. You know, we're not into rum here. Well, at least this show is not about rum, but we'll still include this. The rum barrel is the third generation from all kinds of different sources. Not because it is better, but because it is cheaper and available to them. It can't be consistent, and it isn't. They are living off an old reputation and a belief that simply is not true. Modern day sanitation hasn't hit there yet and hasn't for the past 55 years. I was appalled at some of the things I saw, and as for the cigar industry, I can go on all day, but I will try to hit the bullet points of it. Well, first of all, stopping right here at the rum thing. Number one, you jump from, they had old barrels that were, of different kinds, okay, and then to how they believe they should be using them because they're old and that's tradition, which is what I've heard about some American alcohol companies using great old oak barrels. And first of all, to me, that's kind of pretty cool. But anyway, cool is beside the point. You jump from that right to sanitary conditions. Dave, there's fucking 80 to 100 proof rum in those barrels. Ain't no bacteria growing inside of those fucking things, buddy. Ain't gonna happen. Number two, the one picture you shot of the rum barrels, they all look exactly identical to me. I mean, I don't know. Are you trying to prove the opposite of your point? I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 barrels of exactly the same color with exactly the same stamp on them. So, I don't know what you're talking about in this instance. As for, jumping from mixed up rum barrels that are old to appalling sanitary conditions, well, that's a slippery slope right there. That's just like one has really nothing to do with the other. Anyway, today's modern cigar tobacco farmer in Honduras, Nicaragua, Dominican Republic, Costa Rica, Mexico, and USA grow in fertilized land in a rotation-rested farm and use different seeds to grow different types of tobacco. Not so in Cuba. Today's modern-day cigar tobacco farmer cares for his cigar product tobacco plant by pruning the flowers off the plant as to keep the nutrients going directly to the leaf. Not so in most of Cuba. Today's modern-day cigar tobacco farmer uses 6 primings when removing the leaves, starting from the bottom, removing priming number 1, and resting the plant while removing the tiny plants that soon grow where the removed leaf was, known as suckers, as to keep the nutrients going directly to the leaf. Not so in most of Cuba. Again, in most of Cuba. Actually, let's stop there for a second. When you say not so in most of Cuba, where is the not most part? Let me guess. Robana's farm. Right? Your buddy Hiroshi. Right? His farm. He does all of that. But everywhere else, okay. We're going to get into a little bit of tobacco culture here, and I'm going to teach you a thing or two. We're going to get into all these in a minute, but I just want to go through them first. Look at the ash on this fucking here Cuban. That's nice. Cuba has only 3 primings and are all used in every cigar. That's right, they are all used in every cigar. Every brand and every size. The bottom third first priming is used for combustion. It helps finished cigar burn well. Nothing is wasted here. Volato or sand leaves. Leaves that might touch the ground. Leaves that might touch the ground? Who the fuck cares, man? They have their practices. They clean them. They take care of them. Who cares if they touch the fucking ground? That might be discarded in some fields are used in Cuba. That might be discarded in some fields, Nicaraguan, Honduran fields, right? But are used in Cuba, and nothing is wasted. That's definitely true about Cuba, and that goes right down to bands. You all know how that happens with the transitions I taught you about. Right. The second third is used for aroma. It makes the finished cigar smell good when burning. And the top third of the plant is used to add strength to the cigar. That's it. Oh, I forgot to mention, flavor. And so did they. Let's get the one he's right about out of the way. There are only 3 primings instead of 6. Yes, but this doesn't matter. If you know Cuban cigars and you know how they taste, listen, here's the thing. There have always only been 3 primings. It is the way it was, it is the way it is, and it is the way it ever shall be. And in fact, I'd love to say it like that, but I'm wrong because there is now a 4th priming called Medio Tiempo, which they use in some specialty cigars like the Bajique, and they're actually starting to use it in the Edición Limitada releases as of late. So that's not entirely true anymore. But the 3 major primings that have always been used in Cuba since a century, 2 centuries ago, up until now, since Partagas first opened its fucking doors in 1827, Seco, Ligero, and Volato. Volato, Seco, Ligero. Volato at the bottom, Seco, and then Ligero at the top. These are the 3 primings that every Cuban cigar is made of. Ask yourself this question. If you got worried when you heard that from him, do you even know what a priming is? Then why are you getting worried? And if you do know what it is, then why are you getting worried? It's just a section of the plant that the leaves come from. They use different leaves from different sections of the plant because different leaves have different properties. Some are thicker and have more essence, oils, therefore flavor. Do they really need to say the word flavor, Dave? Do they really need to? I think a lot of it is lost in translation. Do you speak Spanish, by the way? Because I think there's a major communication problem going on here, too. You know, to them, aroma could mean flavor, you know, and it depends on a whole lot of factors, but let's not even get into assumptions. Some leaves are better for combustion. Some leaves are therefore better for filler. Some are better for binder. All 3 leaves are always in the filler. From the core to the outside. Ligero is in the core, then Seco, then Volato. In fact, I've switched my monitor over here to show everybody out there a few things about primings. Since we're talking about primings, we better brush up on our priming knowledge, because people are talking about Cuban primings and saying that they're no good because there's only 3 instead of 5. Oh geez, 5? Sometimes there's 8. Sometimes there's fucking 8 primings, Dave. I mean, shit, in 2 years there may be 12 primings. But it's not all what it seems to be. A lot of it has to do with quality as well. And in this case, it may actually very well be the reverse of what you're trying to say. for instance, getting as many primings as you can out of a single plant. Let me show you what I'm talking about. But first, let's look at the way a Cuban cigar is made over here. Over here, let me zoom in on that a little. I hope everybody can see that. Over here, you have your plant, your, let's say, Cuban tobacco plant. See how many leaves they picture on there, right? And they just break it down into 3 sections. Volado, Seco, Ligero. You have your Ligero in the core, you have your Seco after that, and you have your Volado after that. Now this is just a depiction. Actually, these are all bunched up like that, with pretty much the Ligero stays in the core, and like this, as so, but it's bunched up, and then of course the outside here is your binder and your wrapper. The picture's a little confusing. The Volado is not the binder, alright, just because it's next to the outside. That brown represents the wrapper and the binder. All this inside is filler. Down here what you'll see are different cigars, different Cuban cigars, and depictions of their supposed blends, because blends are basically, and blends, again, we're going to get into that, is really kind of a misnomer when it comes to Cuban cigars. It's more of a ratio than a blend per se, but we'll get into that. Here you have what they're calling a Bolivar Corona Gigante. 2 Volado, 2 Seco, 1 Ligero. So you have a bunch of Ligero, but you get it, all right? Here's a Cohiba Lancero. Now that's a thinner cigar, so it's going to taste different right away. You have 1 Volado, 2.5 Seco, half Ligero in a different format. There you go. Oh, and that tobacco is also treated a little differently. It gets that 3rd fermentation, as you know. Then you have your Cohiba Siglo 2, and more on the bottom, but life goes on. And now, like I said, they also have the Medio Tiempo, so they'll be using that on the outside of special cigars, Bejiques and all that nonsense. But this is how Cuban cigars are basically weighed out, ratioed, in terms of what tobacco they're going to use. Now, as far as primings are concerned, which is very much the same way non-Cubans, I hate that word, you know that, but Nicaraguan or Dominican cigars, the same way that those are made. Okay? Very, very, very similar. Except you have more different primings. But what does that mean exactly? I mean, here's a Cuban tobacco plant. Here's your Volado, Seco, and Ligero. Well, let's take a look. Let's take a look at what they're calling a non-Cuban plant. A non-Cuban plant. No, it's the same type of plant. I mean, okay, it might have been grown from a different seed. Criollo primings or Corojo primings. Remember we talked about this a long, long time ago. The 2 major families of tobacco. First there was Criollo. There was always Criollo. And then came Corojo. And then came a hybrid strain of Criollo. And then they made another bug strain version of this and that. And the Cuban tobacco now is so much different than it used to be. But that's not the point. Here's a tobacco plant. And as you can see, they have the Volado there at the bottom. And then the Seco. Then they have Viso, which is a priming between, here's Dave's 5 priming plant. Can we see that? We can see that. Let's zoom in a little more on that there. And I'll give credit to the websites I'm getting this from. Absolutely. But here you go. Volado, Seco, Viso, and then Ligero. Viso stuck between Seco and Ligero. Basically, all that means is they can get a 4th priming off the plant, which allows them to make more cigars. There's really not too much of a fucking difference between Viso and Ligero or Viso and Seco. It's like a middle ground. It's like a middle ground. Does it give you more range? Yes, probably a little bit. But what really gives you more range is the fact that you're using different tobaccos from different regions in the same cigar, or different strains of tobacco from different regions in the same cigar. I will admit, you have a much wider array of possible flavor profiles, all different kinds of flavors, but it does not mean that the quality of a Cuban cigar is bad in comparison. Absolutely not. And if you have any experience with Cuban cigars whatsoever, any real experience, you'll know that there is an extremely wide range of flavor variations just from these 3 primings from this one magic seed, which to me is where so much of the magic lies. Because you're smoking, in essence, very, very much the same tobacco in almost every Cuban cigar, yes, it's the only time in this article where I'm going to say it's partially true what he's saying. The not true part about it is how he makes it out to be a bad thing. Okay? Because it's not a bad thing. The Cubans could very easily take their tobacco plant and start priming this in the middle of Seco and Ligero at a different time in the season and calling it Viso. They could do that. But they don't. Because that's not the way they do it. It's not their culture. It's not what they've been doing for the last 200 years. This is their tradition. This is their method. And personally, I don't want them to fucking change it. Because that's all people do nowadays is fucking change things. Like the old ways are always bad. The old ways were not always bad. In fact, the old ways are often wasteful in sacrifice for quality. Sacrificing quantity over quality. You don't get a giant fucking beautiful heavy oak wood desk for $200 anymore. You get a piece of fucking slap together shit from IKEA for $1,000. You know? And that's the way it is. When you start breaking down priming after priming, let's take more from the plant. Let's take more from the... On this side in Corojo, I had fucking 8 fucking primings. And then you get all those fancy names that half the people who go into tobacco shops don't have a fucking clue what that is. Like they have the... Remember, I recognize that one right away from the Cuesta Rey Centro Fino. Of course. Okay. The Centro Fino leaf, which on that box they claim is the finest leaf. How can it be the finest leaf? It's in the middle of the fucking plant. That's not the finest leaf. This is the finest leaf. Corona. Now up here on this side, where they have, remember, Seco and Ligero and Viso is a little one in between right here. And they have Corona at the top. You know what Corona is? That's that Medio Tiempo. That new leaf that Cuba's been using. So they have been changing a little. They have been incorporating some of this in there because they know they are going to need to compete eventually. They know they are. You know? But hopefully it's on a good handshake kind of level and not such a, fuck you, you're going to fuck my business up kind of level. Anyway, that's what primings are. So yes, there are only 3 primings. There are only 3 primings in Cuba, but that's not a bad thing. It's not like there used to be 5 and now there are 3 because they're cutting corners. Bullshit. Bullshit. So I hope you all understand that so far. Let me get back to my desk and... shit, my fucking cigar went out. I'm talking so much. I'll relight and we'll get moving on this. Say goodnight, Max.